the story itself of The Lost Thing is told from the point of view of a very introverted, not very emotionally expressive character who is quite quiet, quite uncertain, and in some ways really a remodeling of myself as a teenager. Like, that's how I developed that character. I thought, well, how would I react as a teenager, and how was I? And I was actually quite an introverted and shy teenager who was not one for telling elaborate stories like this one, at least not openly to an audience.
It was part of the animation brief to not have any particularly extreme emotive range from the characters, because as he is going through the story, the audience is also going through the story. So it's quite different when you're looking at a still image in a book of the character. You can set the exact expression or tone that you like to set, whereas when it's moving, you're seeing the boy discover these things and live out the story all throughout. And the little discoveries that he has along the way and the way he reacts to it has to be somewhat in the right tone as the way that the audience would be reacting.
If you look at the original drawings and illustrations in the book, the human characters are always quite small and distant. It's not an intimate space. In film, there is actually slightly more need for intimacy with characters, so you feel a greater urgency to have close-up of a character's face. So that creates a number of problems. Suddenly the character has to be quite detailed. It has to have texture that looks sort of right. And when you're dealing with human characters, you have also this problem, the uncanny valley, as animators refer to it, but it's the same if you're doing painting or sculpture. It's when you start to approximate reality, it gets harder and harder to stop making things look weird. When they're abstract or cartoon-like, there's something that happens in your imagination where you attach certain values to those things quite easily, but as things sort of draw towards a sharper resolution of reality, there's a possibility of conflict between your expectation and what you're seeing, and so those things have to be resolved. Our solution with the characters was to, and this is working quite closely with Sophie and Leo and Tom, both with design and movement, is to actually think about them as wooden puppets. That was maybe the most useful concept. So instead of trying to make the characters look realistic, we would try and keep them looking quite unrealistic. And I remember a lot of discussion, for instance, about jowls and cheeks, because there's a tendency to want to model this part of the face because naturally that's what you do. If somebody says, create a chin and jawline, you sort of tend to do these curves. And I was far more keen to see everything look like sharp lines, almost like someone had come along with a chisel and a hammer, and very simply, and with not a lot of time, made a face in the simplest possible way. And that also worked with animation, because with digital animation, and with a lot of animation generally, there is a problem of a certain stiffness that can come across.
With computer-generated animation, it has a tendency to look computer-generated, and we didn't want that. We wanted it to look very artistically stylized, maintaining the integrity of the book.
So the first thing that we did was work out how we were going to texture the characters. And the boy was a very good model to do that development work on, and eventually settled on a style of texturing which came more or less directly from the artwork that Shaun was able to provide. He painted directly onto various materials to produce a lovely mix of painterly and realistic surfaces. So once we had the model textured and modelled, we then moved on to the next stage is generating all the facial expressions for the character. And for this it's a fairly standard procedure in computer animation. You essentially model a separate shape for every possible expression that you would like the character to make. So we have a string of shapes for different mouth expressions: smiling, frowning, mouth open, shouting, and then different words and sounds for every area of the face. And then these can be sort of blended and assembled on top of each other by the animator to then generate the facial animation for the character.
One of the biggest challenges with the boy character was in his design he has quite big feet and not particularly long legs. And so when he's walking, I had to deal with these large floppy shoes and then give him a sort of goofy, geeky personality to go with that. And then it was just about getting the right amount of geeky but endearing personality there, with him looking a little bit goofy, a little bit hunched, not too tall and proud, but endearing.
It was really important to give the boy a specialised sound because it was such a highly stylised world and he was the most human character. We really needed to look to find what could make his sound special, like a unique voice, a sound that we can use that would precede him in shots. And Shaun had given us the gift of his bag full of bottle tops, and that had become a defining sound for that character, as well as his giant feet, which our Foley artist Adrian Medhurst had to design a special walk with big floppy feet.
You know, everything's about balance, and in this case, getting the balance between a character who's expressive and that you can feel emotionally engaged with, but has to be extremely reserved and quite introverted. And so I was just trying to move those lines around to get just the right point in which it felt not too much one way or the other.